Would you like to create a life that can become a true expression of your soul? Then be sure to listen to my interview with Marni Battista, who is the founder of the Institute for Living Courageously. You'll hear about Marni's true life wake-up call, this incredible accident skiing that Marni had that broke her back in 7 places, and how she healed her back through forgiveness. The 7 questions to having a meaningful life. And my favorite, you'll discover Marni's unique process for dating with dignity, which helps women attract high-quality partners into their lives. And there is so much terrific more in this interview with Marni. Come join us. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Marni Battista, who is an entrepreneur, a transformational coach, an author, a podcast host, a wife, and a mother. Marni has a master's degree in education, and she also has certifications from the International Coaching Federation and the Hoffman Institute, which focuses on transformative adult education, spiritual growth, and leadership. In 2012, Marni founded the Institute for Living Courageously, which helps women in midlife figure out how to reinvent the next chapter of their lives without sacrificing what they've already built. By using research-based interventions and experiential techniques that foster deep, lasting transformation, Marni helps them overcome burnout and overwhelm to create fulfilling, intimate relationships and meaningful lives. In her book, titled Your Radical Living Challenge, 7 Questions for a Meaningful Life, Marni shares her own story and struggles to live a life of purpose and fulfillment, and what she learned along the way, which provides a roadmap for others. Marni and her inspiring work have appeared in the LA Times, the New Yorker, the Dr. Phil Show, On Air with Ryan Seacrest, and more. I'm looking forward to talking with Marni, who lives in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and I have to say I've skied there and it's beautiful, about the remarkable story of her own life's wake-up call, how she healed a back injury through forgiveness, the 7 questions to a meaningful life, why is it important to go deep to design a life you love, and more, for what will surely be an inspiring and uplifting interview about creating a life that can become a true expression of your soul. Hi, Marni. Welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. So honored.
We're going to have a wonderful interview. And I know there's so many things that you do that can help people. So I'm really very happy to have you here. You're welcome. So everything you do sort of centers around these 7 key questions about what you do. So I have like 3 questions I'm going to combine together because I know you can address them all. The first is, how did you discover those 7 key questions that bring more meaning to a person's life? And as far as these questions, how do they empower a person to make better choices for their life? And then that filters into your personal wake-up call and how you recalibrated your life by actually applying those 7 key questions. So let it rip, Marni, go.
Well, I think so. Number 1 and number 3 are kind of tied together. In 2019, my dad died from cancer diagnosis. He died. I always joke that he wasn't planning to die that weekend because he used to check himself in. He was very positive. And he would check himself in and he used to say it was like, a staycation and the food was great. So he wasn't, he wasn't planning on it. And I obviously went to go visit him and to go be with him. And as he started to decline and then he became less responsive, he started mumbling about his credit card bills and he started mumbling about work emails. And it was just like he was tapping on his phone, like just trying desperately to like get in there and check things. And I had this fleeting thought at the time, Irene, of like, God, is this like what you care about at the end of your life? Like, you're worried about your bills and your whatever. And I thought, and I just filed that, like, is that really what I want to be thinking about at the end of my life? And then that following September, it was the Jewish high holidays, and I went to the service, and the rabbi asked in his sermon about these 7 questions, and he said the story is, you go to the gates of heaven, and you're asked before you get your bagels and your coffee, you're asked, did you lead a meaningful life? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, did my dad lead a meaningful life? Because he had so much regret and wished he did more and made more and all these sorts of success parameters growing up in Great Neck, like being around a lot of affluent people. And I thought, oh gosh, really the real question is, am I leading a meaningful life? And I started to do research on these questions. And then about 9 months later, I found myself in Whistler in Canada on a ski trip. I was heading down the mountain with a friend in a neon orange jacket. We came to this crossroads, and one was like a cat track kind of around, and one was like a double black diamond. And it was a beautiful day, and I just got new ski boots, and I was feeling kind of sassy. And I had that moment of like, I should go this way, but I followed her, and I landed flat on my back. I flew in the air. You talk about flying in the air in your car accident. And I realized like that is a metaphor for my life. I'm following whatever I think the rules are, society says we're supposed to do, like the climbing the ladder to nowhere, not listening to myself, racing down. And while I was laying there, I was like, this is something that is going to change my life, because when
I can relate. Wow, yeah. Can I relate?
And a little different to your story, because like, I wasn't bleeding, or I thought I just tried to stand up, and I thought, oh God, something's really wrong with
your
me.
back was broken, right?
Yeah. Oh my sacrum was broken in 7 places.
Oh my God.
And laying, so I returned home. And I couldn't move for like 9 weeks, 10 weeks.
Oh my God.
And I just remember thinking, like, if I'm not doing, if I'm not serving, if I'm not fixing, if I'm not doing anything, like, who am I? Like I just had built my whole life from this place of like, go, do, be, fix, care for, achieve more, never satisfied. And so I went to the doctor, I did what I was supposed to do. And he said, okay, you're healed. And I had so much pain. I couldn't walk, Irene. And I was like, I can't be healed. Like, I'm in pain. He's like, well, looks good to me. The CT scan shows that you're healed. So see ya.
And you were still in pain.
I was
still in pain.
I couldn't walk without pain. And I thought, is this going to be the story of my life? And that's when I started seeking out all these different sort of like answers. And I found this person who my mentor suggested, and I talked to him, and he said, you've broken these 7 places in your sacrum, because your sacrum is your foundation of your physical self. And you built the foundation on your life from your neck up. You haven't looked at your emotions. You haven't looked at your soul. And it needed to break so that you could rebuild. And in that moment, Irene, I was like, 7 breaks, 7 questions.
What's the coincidence in that? Right.
And that was when I really realized, like, I have to start creating a new paradigm for what it looks like to live a successful and meaningful life.
And what are those 7 key questions? Could you tell us what they are?
I can. They're and so I took them. I did this research. They're from the ancient Talmudic texts. I obviously modernized them. I universalized them. I changed the order. I always like to say that because I don't want to do copyright infringement on whoever wrote the ancient text. So one is, did you seek wisdom? Were you really authentically you? And I encourage people who are listening to think about this in the context of your life, right?
And so many people walk around in life with masks on. They're not really authentically themselves.
Yep. Were you radically honest with yourself? Did you busy yourself with creation? Did you make time for your spiritual life? Were you hopeful? And do you recognize the blessings? And those questions, and in my book, I dive deep into what all of those mean. That has become the focus for how I really create and center back into what does it look like to lead a meaningful life, especially because there is always and more than ever more chaos in all of our lives.
Oh, unbelievable. But I look at these seven questions, and it sounds to me that if you can answer each of those questions honestly, it leads to tremendous gratitude. Tremendous gratitude.
Well, gratitude and agency, right? Because so many of us go in our life, and I know when you shared your story about like everyone's like, why don't you feel sorry for yourself? Like, why aren't you in a puddle in the floor, right? Like, how can you go on? And I really love that you shared your story with me, because that's really living a radical life, right? Like, radical isn't reckless. Radical is saying like, I have agency for my life. If everyone says I should be sad and grieve and I shouldn't be joyful because I've had loss and there's chaos and people are dying and suffering every day, a radical life. And I really believe that the most courage that it takes is to actually find joy in the face of chaos. And that is really, really like the source of our power. And so these questions empower us to have agency to actually create success in ways that are under our control. Because as we all know who are listening to this, if you're resonating with grief and rebirth, shit's happened that was out of your control and it was not the way you intended your life to go. And when you start focusing on answering these questions on a daily basis, this is the act of living, and that is what will bring you joy and meaning.
That's beautiful, Marni. And I know that you also talk about untangling. Those questions help to untangle the knots, or what you refer to as the shoulds, that keep us stuck in our lives. And you also talk about avoidance behaviors that people use to be stuck. So please tell us about that.
So it's interesting. So when I'm working with people, and I say, and this really ties well into, are you radically honest with yourselves? And I think that most people in the 10 commandments sort of a way who are listening are pretty good at not stealing, coveting, lying, right? But when it comes to how are we showing up for ourselves in our own life, I see avoidance as the number one way in which we're not honest with ourselves. And so I'm just going to share some of these from the book because they're really subtle, and you would be like, no, Marni, Irene, I'm not avoiding anything. So here's some: rationalizing, creating a silver lining, no matter what happens, ignoring, pretending, not speaking up, tolerating, over cleaning, overeating, over shopping, keeping score, being vindictive, being righteous, judging others, adrenaline seeking, attention seeking. There's a whole list.
Wow.
And it's not to make you feel bad about yourself. This question says, like, if you're going to be you, really, and you're going to be radically honest, these are the things that are stealing your joy. These are the things that are preventing you from connecting. These are the ways that you are unable to see the blessings and the joys in your life. And when I work with people and they start to really answer these questions, the beauty is they go, oh, well, now I understand why nothing is working for me.
Right. And what about these knots and the shoulds? Is that
they go hand in
They
hand,
go
right?
hand. So they're avoidance behaviors also, right?
Well, yeah.
They
So
keep us stuck.
let's just take one for example, right? So not speaking up or pretending, right? So it's like if you were gonna draw a straight line, they would meet, right? Because I shouldn't put my needs before someone else. I shouldn't speak up or I'll probably get fired. I shouldn't, right? And we don't
Yeah,
speak up.
and we
We
all
don't
have them. Or I say a lot of people say don't should on yourself.
exactly. So often the way that we compensate with our shoulds is by avoiding all those things, right? Like, I should, da da da. And then we just scroll on our phone. We doom scroll. We, watch 10 hours of TV. We drink an extra 2 glasses of wine, whatever it is to numb, right? And so the thing is that these shoulds are these rules that you're living your life by that were prescribed by other people. When I do this work and I ask people where their shoulds come from, especially when they're like our age, 50s, 60s, whatever, and I go, where did you learn this? And they go, my mother. And I'm like, well, what year was your mother born? And they're like, I don't know, 1940. And I'm like, well, where do you think your mother learned it from her mother? When was she born? Oh, 1900. I'm like, so you're literally following rules that were prescribed by you, prescribed to you that you're not even questioning.
Right. And they're outdated now and people don't live that way.
They're exactly, but we believe they're rules. And I really think that whether you're rebelling against rules just for the sake of being a rebel, or you're a people pleaser or a good girl or whatever it is, my invitation to you is to start just questioning them. There might be some that you go, oh, I don't feel like this is a should. This is a choose to. I want to. This is what feels right for me. And this one, I still hear my mother's voice in my head, and I hear that from a lot of people.
Right? So tell us, you have these integrated, proven, research-based interventions and experiential techniques to break through all of those recordings, and you use it at your Institute for Living Courageously. So tell us about how this fosters self-worth and lasting transformation. How do these techniques work? How do you employ them?
So one of my favorites is one of my, I had a coach that worked with me, and we decided to name them Your Little Who. And the reason why we call them Your Little Who is that they're the parts of you that were younger, that had to survive and develop certain beliefs and patterns. And so a lot of people go to therapy or they do work and they go, oh, this is my emotional child. And they create an awareness of it. And that's it. And they go, oh, I learned this pattern because my dad was an alcoholic. And so I always want to make sure everyone's happy. And they have this assumption that because they know about it, they can heal it or change their behavior. And that's not true. So one of the things that gets skipped is actually going back to the first time that you remember having this felt sense in your body of, let's just say, people pleasing. And I ask people, and so if you're listening, you can really think of a pattern that's really alive in your life today and say, well, how old was I the first time I remember that? And rather than just having that awareness, the invitation is to actually imagine that we could close your eyes, you can keep them open, you can actually write out this dialogue if you're a journaler, and have a conversation with this version of yourself, and to acknowledge and validate the experience that part of you had and is still trying to protect you from. And when you go in and you have a conversation with your little who, when I do it, I always am like, come on, sit on my lap, even if she's 14, and by the way, you can have 20-year-old little who's, 30-year-old, 10-year-old, 4-year-old, precognition birth, early birth, little who's, and you acknowledge, and my favorite way to do this is like, it's okay. It's okay. If you don't know what to say, you're talking to her. Because the thing is that when we don't validate our own experience, and most people go like, oh, you shouldn't feel like that, you know better than that. We're not allowing that part of ourselves to actually get the unmet childhood need actually met. And when we do that, we actually rewire our neural pathways. And then we tell that little part of ourselves, you know what? You don't have to protect me anymore. And then that's when you educate it about who you are today, right? And I always say to people, there are areas in your life where you are crushing it, right? And so you go, it's okay. You know what? Look, at work, I don't people please, right? Like I'm very confident in that area of my, and I've got you. And I'm listening to Irene's podcast, and I'm reading books, and I'm doing healing work, and like I've got you. And you have this dialogue. What would it take for you to start to trust me again? So talk to your little who's, hear them, acknowledge them, assure them. That will actually start to create inner psychological safety so that you can truly develop new ways of being, new ways of behaving, and untangle all those knots.
That's fabulous. And Marni, how does a personality type shape a person's future? That fascinated me that you talk about that.
Yeah.
So is a future different for an extrovert than an introvert, or a high sensitive, or what?
No, I have my own. I've made up my own little archetypes. So what I've realized is that because of these patterns, we develop identities. And I call them personality types because they are probably 50% at least acquired.
Oh, interesting.
The other 50% is probably part of who you are, really, in your essential self of who you are. But 50% epigenetics, the study of epigenetics shows that 50% of our personality traits, right, are acquired, right? And so this quiz that I have allows you to actually identify what type you are, what archetype you are. And it points out the 50% that's acquired that you could start to shift so that you can become what I call a creator in your life, which is an ongoing iterative way of living your life according to these 7 questions, where you're designing a life of meaning and fulfillment for you. So it's important to know what type you are and where the gaps are so that you can actually start to become a creator through healing and adjusting those acquired personality traits and really expanding that 50% into what is truly you.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. It's called a delete, or called an edit for your life, I would think, in a way, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna,
it's an upgrade. It's an upgrade.
Right?
It's an upgrade. I always say, like we upgrade our phone, we upgrade our sheets, we upgrade our kitchen, right? And our identity needs to get an upgrade.
That's great. Yes, it's true. And you and I are both living proof of that. So I want to talk about your book for a few seconds. We have, it's your radical living challenge, 7 questions for a meaningful life. And you share your own story and your struggle to live a life of purpose and fulfillment and what you learned along the way. Tell us about this roadmap and the unique approach to personal growth you present in your book that transforms a life from inside out.
Yeah. So after that ski accident, there I was. It was the pandemic. It was kind of crazy.
Oh, and by the way, would you insert with the ski accident? I know you eventually healed your back through forgiveness. So
I will
right
tell that story. I will tell that story. Exactly. It's like perfect timing. So it was the pandemic for a lot of people. Their adult kids came back home. I was in the lull of like family. I mean, I was upstairs. I couldn't move, but they came up. They brought me trays. We watched TV together. But then they left. Once everyone realized it was going to go away in 6 weeks, everyone, went back to regular scheduled programming for the most part. And I couldn't work. My kids were gone. My husband, which was like wanting to get out of Los Angeles, he had been waiting, like counting the days till those kids left the house. And I was so frustrated because I was just, I didn't want to leave. I was mad at him for like even bringing the situation up. I didn't want to talk about it. I couldn't walk. I was a mess, Irene. And so, what happened was that, I really realized that part of it was I was afraid to change and I didn't know how. Like, I didn't know what was next. And so I started searching on the internet and I was like, empty nest coaching, I was Googling everything as one does. And it was just not me. I was getting things like I didn't lose anything. It was grief. I didn't get a divorce. I didn't need a hobby. I didn't need to learn how to play pickleball. I was knitting. I had lots of stuff going on in my life. And I couldn't find a way into what was my next chapter. And that's when I discovered the design thinking model that comes out of Stanford University. And it is the model that by which products are actually developed. And so all design consultants use this model. And I thought, what if I adapt this to my own life and I put the 7 spiritual questions as the background of it? And I think of the ideal life that I want to live as the product. And I really get clear on the user of that life, which is me. And then I adapt that design thinking process to my life. And that's when magic sort of started to happen. And it is how I ended up actually coming up with the idea to write the book. It's how my husband and I decided to go through the process of ultimately selling our house in Los Angeles and living in an RV for a year.
That's an amazing story all by itself,
right?
As I was reading in your book. Whoa.
Yeah. to figure out really who am I now and what really blows my hair back, and doing that process created joy in itself. To where we ended up landing here in Steamboat Springs. I was just writing an article about it. And it's like, first of all, I didn't really know that Steamboat Springs even existed. When I made my list of places to retire or where I wanted to go, I thought of the usuals, Florida and Arizona. And also the desert in California, because that's where... And so the reason why I love this process is because when you really get clear on who you really are in your upgraded identity, there are things that are buried so far below the surface about really what light you up that you cannot simply think about from the neck up or looking on the internet. And so I literally uncovered through the process the exact right next life for me. So I changed my business. I changed my orientation of my business. I fired everyone. I simplified it. I moved to Colorado. Everything changed in my life. And
it took a lot of courage too. That took a lot of courage.
That's why it's the Institute of, Living Courageously. But I walk everyone through this life design process. And the thing that's really great about it, Irene, is that we can't predict what's going to make us happy. We don't know what that looks like. And because we don't know, we don't do anything. So this model allows you to tiptoe into exploring things. So you don't have to blow up the life you have. This isn't reckless living. It's radical living. It doesn't have to be a big thing like selling your house and living in an RV. These small things. I've seen my clients do things like decide they were an introvert for their whole life and be like, am I? And question that assumption and joining a hiking group and starting to revisit spirituality in a way that works for them and having a community in that, or just to start really expanding your life rather than having it get smaller and smaller as you age.
That's beautiful. And tell us about how you healed your back through forgiveness. Now the doctor says you're healed, you're still in pain.
Yes. So part of the process in the design thinking model was my husband and I were asking these questions, which I will ask you in the book. And one of them is like, what were your peak experiences in your life? So my husband and I sat down, we made this big list, and we were like, we both did it separately, and then we compared them, and they were the same kinds of things. And I was like, wait, these are all these vacations we've gone on, like in nature. And we both had this big epiphany, and we're like, wait a minute, why are we only doing peak experiences on vacation? Why are we not making our life a peak experience? And so we were ideating, and we came up with this crazy idea. Let's rent an RV, like a van, for 2 weeks. We'll go on a little vacation. We'll explore. We'll see if we like it. So we rent the little Sprinter van. And we're going in Utah. And I was leading a retreat, and there was a labyrinth there. And I had put my clients through this forgiveness process. And after it was over, similar to your story, I got a voice that wasn't my own, and it said, "Walk the labyrinth."
Wow.
And I was like, but I have a brace on. I can barely walk. Walk the labyrinth. So I told my husband, before we leave, I'm walking this labyrinth. And I did this Ho'oponopono forgiveness process, which is, thank you, I love you, I forgive you.
Right. Or I've heard it as, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
Yes. I'm
I
sorry.
love you. Thank
Yes.
you. Right.
Yeah. It's, you can look it up, but it's
Right.
got these 3 things in it. And first of all, I'm sorry when you want to forgive someone is a really hard one. Cause I was like, I'm sorry. You should be sorry. So I start this process and I start with the girl, my friend in the neon orange jacket who I followed down the ski hill.
And if I hadn't followed her, I wouldn't have gone through all
Yeah,
this.
and I had a whole good story because right before we left, her husband said, Jackie, do not take Marni down these like, don't be selfish. You're so selfish. And so
Wow.
I was like, see, it's her fault. And I start saying, thank you. Thank you. And tears start coming out. And I love you. And I'm walking and I'm like, I can't believe I'm walking. Like I'm not feeling anything, no pain. And then I
Wow.
have this whole thing for my brother and I'm just bawling,
Wow.
right? And so I was like, that was so intense. So I come back, go about my day, get in the RV. We go to Zion National Park in Utah. And there's this big famous hike called Angel's Landing. And I tell my husband, I want to do this hike. And my husband's like, are you literally on crack? Like you could barely walk. I was like, I don't know if something's changed. He's like, what's changed? I'm like, I don't know. Something's changed. I was like, I promise you, if it hurts, I will stop. And Irene, I made it to the top.
Wow. Wow. How amazing.
My pain was gone. And I remember there are these like ladders that you hold on to and you can hold on. And this guy was above me and it was COVID times, guys, where we weren't like touching people. And this guy reached out this hand and said, let me help you.
Wow.
And I was like, surrender, allow yourself to get help and keep climbing. And I did. And it was amazing. And I was pretty much pain free after that.
That's incredible. What a blessing. So I want everybody now they want to go on your site and they want to work with you. So tell us about your design, your dream life, dating with dignity. And I want to ask you about dating with dignity, your mindset and performance coaching, and anything else you'd like to share with our audience.
Yeah. So when I first started my business for about 14, 15 years, I focused exclusively on dating. Well, I tried to help people exclusively on dating, but you know what happened is that honestly, when you do my model and my method, it's kind of the easy part. So they would do my work and they would meet their guy. And then they'd go, wow, you know what? I figured out who I really am. I figured out the user of the product. And you know what else? This doesn't work. My business isn't working. My career isn't working. Where I live isn't working. And I have clients that would stay with me for like years and years and years because we really completely give their life a full body makeover. And so the soul of my business has always been helping women live a life beyond what they could have dreamed. And I'm also really good at having dating be the starting point. If you're single and you're like, I've done everything and it doesn't work for me. It's a great first place to start doing this internal work. And really, once you do it, you just follow the method. It's just a matter of time before you meet your person.
That's amazing. So speaking of dating with dignity, what is this unique process that helps women attract high quality relationships and opportunities effortlessly? I think a lot of people are going to go effortlessly. And what is your guidance to high achieving women? Because that's a big challenge for women who are high achieving when it comes to dating.
It really is. So the thing is that what you believe and what you put your attention on will just grow. So if you believe there's no good men, if you believe that men are intimidated by you, if you believe nothing works for you, then it will. And I always say, like, if you want to argue for your limitations, I will let you win that fight. But if you're coachable and you're open, let me show you the secret key to where all the great men are. And that is to actually do that work of healing and releasing that part of you that uses those beliefs as a protective measure because you're actually afraid to get your ass kicked.
You're so right about that. Oh my goodness.
So, and everyone who comes to me is like, you don't know, it's the worst for me. I live in the smallest town, or I live in the biggest city, or I make way more money, or I've been married 17 times. No one will want to be with me. we just need to really, really release that. And then actually do that work in that empathy phase of finding out who you are. And then I actually have an amazing process where I help people write their profiles in this very unique way so that they can be very, very discerning without being picky, help you get your photos. I have a method where it feels effortless because it feels
Do you help
aligned to
them
your
get
soul.
online to meet people and all?
I
Do you
do
do that?
online and offline. Yep. Because both are really important. You want to have a diversified dating portfolio. Don't put it all in the stock market.
And you tell people how to handle the different responses that come through and all that.
Yeah, I help you with your
You're a
communication,
coach for the
text
romance.
message. Yes, everything. And what's crazy is when I go in somebody's inbox, if they've been dating online, it's been a fail. I can literally be like, well, that's why that didn't work. And that's what and people are like, oh crap. Just interviewed a client of mine who's a success story. And she was like, you know what my biggest takeaway was, Marni? And I said, what? And she said, I thought I was doing it right. And I was doing literally every single part of it wrong. And she's like, and now I literally have a spreadsheet because there are so many guys that I'm interested in that are treating me so well. I'm having so much fun. I feel like I'm the contestant on the Golden Bachelorette, like I get to choose. And she said, I can't believe I'm 60 years old and I'm having the time of my life.
That's fabulous, Marni.
Yeah.
Marni, do you have a special offer for our podcast audience today?
I do. So besides going to get my book, which you can get at any bookstore, go to radicallivingchallenge.com to get it. I have this quiz about your personality type, and it's decodeyourdestinyquiz.com. And you just go there and you answer. It takes less than 30 seconds. And then I will give you a full report of the 50% that's acquired, and I'll show you where you need to grow. And then if you want to have a conversation with me about it after that, absolutely, there's a way to book a conversation.
That's wonderful. And it really, you've answered the question of why should someone go deep through the healing process to design a life they love on her own terms.
Yeah.
And it's about untangling the knots. And
it really is. And what I really want people to know is that when I say beyond your wildest dreams, that's really the beautiful part, right? And it's like you could have never imagined before your accident, and that first little whisper you got, like of what the experiences you would have in your life, the impact that you would make, the people that you would touch. It's beyond what you could have consciously dreamed up and imagined. And it took a tragedy. And we all have tragedies in our life. And the opportunity is to rise up, right? That is really what makes a meaningful life is, did I rise up in the face of challenge? I say this in my book again and again, right? To create and to be the person who is advocating for the mission of our soul, because it is right there in front of you. And I encourage people who are listening to understand that the window is open just right over there. But what you're doing is you're like the fly, that fly that buzzes against the closed window.
Yeah, you keep knocking your head into the...
Right. But over there, there's a window. And that's beyond your wildest dreams. So whatever's happened to you, even though it's really crappy, I think Irene and I both believe it's happened for you. So open your eyes, read the book, and walk through the window, walk through the door.
That's beautiful. And what is the Marni Battista tip for finding joy in life, and how is it connected to recognizing the blessings in your life?
Oh, I'm speaking at my synagogue tomorrow night. I'm doing the little sermon, which is a full circle moment. And it's this, that we don't have to do big things to find joy. If you take a moment and you look out the window, you savor the coffee as you hold your mug and take in that amazing first drink. As you take your first breath in the morning, childlike wonder for the basic things in our life, and really feeling that at the level of beyond gratitude and appreciation, but just at the soul level. That's my invitation, because yes, the big things are amazing, but we have an opportunity to revel in the blessing that we get to be alive, to take another breath, and to have wonder at the most amazing things that are around us. And we can hold that and the chaos and the pain that's in the world. And my tip is that they can coexist, and then feed the one that feeds your soul, which is probably going to be the blessings.
Marni, that is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So wise. And I want to thank you for all you do to help people transform from feeling stuck and unfulfilled to radiating confidence and purpose. How inspiring and truly wonderful that you help them to emerge as the architects of their own lives, unapologetically authentic and fully empowered to create the future they've always dreamed of. And I thank you from my heart for this special interview about creating a life that will become a true expression of one's soul.
Oh, thanks.
My pleasure. And it's been so great to have you here. As I like to say, to be continued. Thank you, Marni. Many blessings.
You too.
Right back. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.